America at 250. Happy birthday. Now what? Yes, welcome to Mark and Pete. 250 years old, barely out of adolescence by civilization standards. This is Mark and Pete, two blokes with half an opinion. Now, here's our first thought.
An important declaration. After 250 years, one recollects US independence that Britain respects. But some things that an Englishman truly objects. It's the waste of good tea and strange dialects. Yes, indeed. Well, indeed, yes. 1776. You remember that year? Yes, that was the year on the 4th of July that the United States became independent. Yes, independent of Britain. Well, many people will say, well, the United States has continued and prospered. If you think of innovations, if you think of much in contributions to the world economy. Now, Mr. Pete, I know that you like a good cup of tea, and we'll talk about this because one of the reasons, dare I say, that America is actually independent is to do with something we also like, which is tax. And we'll talk about the history of the United States. But what say you about the United States celebrating 250 years of independence?
Well, you know, we're big fans of the United States on this show, and of course, many congratulations to them. And the United States, I would just say at the outset, is an unusual country, and experiment in bringing in people from all different quarters to make a people. It's been done before, of course, but not so so deliberately to bring people in that way to form a
Yes.
new people,
On
and
such scale as well.
and it has turned out on a massive scale. And in terms of power, hegemony, some people might say, exerting their power over other countries in the world, I would argue, controversial at this stage, Mr. Mark, that the this influence that America has of the world is largely for the good.
Yes. Well, I think overall it probably has turned out that way. But how did we get here? Well, one of the reasons is that the Britain at one time had a colony. The United
Yes.
States of America was part of it. But the Native Americans had an objection. The British, for many reasons, certainly ruled with an iron rod. But more
Yes.
importantly, is that the Native Americans didn't like the idea of tax. Now, tax came upon many different things, but famously the Tea Act, which the Parliament of Britain enforced on the 10th of May, 1773. That was 3 years before independence. But what happened is that many Native Americans decided to disguise themselves and basically were one night in December, members of the Sons of Liberty boarded the Dartmouth, a merchantman that had docked in Boston Harbor. And guess what? They decided to throw hundreds of tea chests into the Boston Harbor in protest. It all starts there, doesn't it, with a cup of tea, Mr. Pete? Now, the fact of the matter is that if you think in history, ironically, that tax was with the beginning of this. And when we look at, presidents through the years, particularly when somebody like Donald Trump, who does like tariffs, dare I say tax,
Loves them.
therein is a sense of irony, isn't there?
Yes, it's interesting that tariffs have come back. And tariffs, though, were the major way that the United States of America drew in revenue, and it was more important in Britain in the past. Tariffs, of course, still in place in all countries, but um, Donald Trump, the current president of the United States, has made a big play on using tariffs as a form of tax that could eventually phase out income tax, and also used it as like a political weapon. I'll increase the taxes if you don't give me a better deal or don't do what I want in some sort of other part of the political sphere. So yes, it is rather ironic that this tyranny of taxation has been exerted by the United States, whereas in reverse, that's why the United States was formed as a country in isolating itself from Britain. Of course, there were states that were united before that happened, but they didn't become the country, the United States, until that vital time when they declared their independence in 1776, and then they got a new constitution, new country together in 1787. So I guess you could say, well, we got the wrong year because it's actually 1787 that the constitution was put together, but we'll give them those few years. It's been, if anything, the most remarkable, startling success for a country, both in terms of its economy and in
Yeah.
terms of its use of mainly soft power across the world, influence, rather than just simply wiping other countries off the face of the map.
Well, we'll come on to some of the achievements or perhaps negative parts, but the fact is that many people have sort of viewed the United States progress in a dramatic course, dare I say, skyrocketing rocketing to the moon. I mean, let's be honest, they've put a man on the moon, they've
Yeah,
invented numerous technological devices and gadgets that we use today. And also, again, in warfare, they're often seen as being almost like the world's police. Without the United States, where would
yeah.
we be? The dynamic
Mhm.
would be probably very different if we looked at the influence of the East, whether that be China, Russia, or elsewhere. Now, the other thing as well to note is the cultural thing. Now, I have a slight challenge, but in a positive way, folks, so bear with me. That many Americans say that they don't have the same depth of culture as, say, Britain. I disagree with this. I think that
Yes,
when you
I
think
agree.
about
Yeah.
fashion, music, rock and roll and other things like this, when you think of art, so you look at obviously, pop art and many other things from Warhol and many other well-known artists over the years, they've contributed enormously to culture. And I think that one of the things that they've also done is that they've wrangled with culture. So we know that often many people are politically divided and socially divided for very various different reasons. But one of the things that I think that they hold together is a sense of belief. And wanted to come on to this because it sort of plays to your strengths a little bit, which is on the religious side.
Sure.
Donald Trump, irrespective of what you think of him as a businessman or as a politician, has very much played to the Christian faith. Tell
Yeah.
me about that thought and how you think America
Well,
reflects that.
okay. Well, here is a Bible verse on this subject, Psalm 33, verse 12. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. And the United States of America was founded really uh, based around all of the precepts of the Christian faith. Not all the founders who put together the Declaration of Independence were Christian, all those who wrote the Constitution, but they all believed in God, and the God they believed in was the Christian God. And it's based on certain fundamental characteristics of the Christian faith that are that are put individual and individual ownership of property as something that's fundamental, which gives place in society for capitalism, and therefore for you can have a real engine for growth in
Yes.
America. And so the Christian faith, you can say, yes, is behind that. Organizing your country as one where there is high trust works well if the majority of people are Christian, where that's an essential part of the faith. But more than that, I would say, supernaturally speaking, God blesses a country that is trying to bless him and to thank him and um, openly acknowledge him as Lord. So, taking on that psalm, God, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. You could put it the other way, God will bless such a nation. And so, yeah, looking back, I would say, yes, we've seen the nation, the new nation, relatively young civilization of the United States be blessed by God. If they can retain that, and it does look like they're doubling down on that in many states, and certainly with the current presidency, uh, with a lot of Christian or Roman Catholic, another form of Christianity, Christians being in government positions at the moment. If they can retain that and the benefits to society and the economy that I've just outlined, I think the next 250 years will show that this was just the beginning. This was the start of the flowering of the United States.
Yes, well, here's the thing now we look to the future. What will the next 250 years look like for the United States and indeed for the rest of the world? Well, it's often very difficult to do that because, of course, you can only predict so far in a world that's constantly changing. But it can say that the United States will be a major influencer in technology. Their space exploration is something that they have invested in, they've committed to, and this is something that isn't going to go away. When you think of organizations that are run by Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos and many others, they want to explore the opportunity of what can mankind do beyond the planet Earth. Similarly, again, when it comes to artificial intelligence, they're very much a leader in this. They're not the only ones. China, Britain, and many others are on this game, and many other countries around the world. But the fact of the matter is, they are pioneers in when it comes to technology. And when you have such influence, both in terms of software, hardware, and innovation, having that forum, that ability, that culture, that ethos to want to push the boundaries, I can't see actually slowing down. In fact, in many ways, I agree with you that I think that, by the next 250 years, I still think that the future looks good for the United States. Yes, they have economic challenges. Yes, they have in-house sort of social problems, but I think that they are a better place than perhaps some of the other countries around the world. So, what say you about other things that you think what America might look like in 250 years' time? What say
But,
you?
well, I think in 250 years, when we're going to see more and more people moving in. I think whatever, even though if there's a stem in the tide of the influx of different nationalities into the United States at the moment, I think it's going to be different demographically, but it will. At the moment, we have the number of people of European origin reducing. What I see is this controversial point again. I think that the change will be that such that we're going to see a majority white United States of America going forward, a reassertion of the people, the immigrants from Europe, and I could see the United States becoming more Christian as well. And the reason I say that is I see that a move against pressures in the opposite direction. I'm not saying whether that's good or bad, whether white or black or whatever. That's not the way to comment here. I just see the pressure towards that coming from many within the United States, and that sort of concept uh, is in the ascendancy at the moment to restore the white European heritage in the United States. In 252 years' time, I think we're going to see a very confident United States have it with its culture and art, as you were mentioning earlier, more widely recognized because it's older and more established by the rest of the world. And I can see them going back to their missionary enterprises, exporting Christianity to the rest of the world. I could see America, the United States of America, being a powerhouse for good in the world. At least that's what I hope.
Well, indeed, and I would agree. And in fact, I think that the innovation is one of the things that I think that we look forward to seeing more of. I do think that whilst there are threats and there are certainly challenges for the United States, I think there's more good than bad. And maybe over time, what we'll see is that they will actually, as a nation, be an example of how you take ownership and put your own people first. You work on the things that you need to do to resolve it. And if there are challenges and foreign fields, etc., so be it. But, let's celebrate, let's wave the flag to the next 250 years of the United States of America.